Welcome back to the Means Report. Thanks again to Margaret Woodard. Always an informative conversation, as is our chat with our next guest. He is John Usry. He's the Assistant Director of the Traffic Engineering Division for Augusta, Richmond County. John, thank you for coming back so soon. I know I have you on a lot, but I love talking to you and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me back.
How did we do Masters Week? How was traffic?
I think we did really well this year for Masters Week. You know, we've had a lot of the same team members that work together, you know, everybody from the sheriff to Augusta National, and it takes a big group of people to pull that off and make it seem like it's working well and make it seem, you know, like a well-oiled machine. So we have a lot of the same players in the same position, so that really helps. It also helped that we didn't have any kind of weird weather days during the Masters this year. True. That also kind of throws a wrench into things for Masters. So traffic. So yeah, I think we did well. We got a lot of compliments on how we conducted it, and we hope to improve it in the future.
So our Channel 6 crew every day, our route to Augusta National Masters Week is to go up Washington Road from the base of the Calhoun Expressway and then go toward the National that way. Mm-hmm. John, I don't know if we ever encountered any traffic issues. Did y'all clear that route on purpose? It was beautiful, and typically there's a ton of traffic.
This year we didn't have to close Alexander Drive as many times as we have in the past. I'm not sure if traffic on its own just decided to go different routes, but we did see a little bit heavier volume coming in the back way, which is Berkman's Road, up through you know, Ingleside and the roundabout, and so we saw more traffic come in that way than we have in the previous years. But we didn't have to open and close the road as much, and that typically was what creates a lot of the traffic congestion on that portion of Calhoun and Washington Road. And we also made some adjustments to the temporary traffic signal that we put in at River Ridge Drive. And we had that one sort of dialed in better. Last year was the first year we'd ever had it. We learned some things last year, so we adjusted the signal timing this year and a couple things how it operates, and so we think it just ran better overall.
Are our roads and bridges, roads and signals, excuse me, fully functional now after Hurricane Helene? Is that behind us?
As far as the operation, yes. We still have a few traffic signals that were damaged during the hurricane, and so we've had to put up temporary poles. We had a few mast arm traffic signals. You know, you have the arm that goes out over the road. Those are still down, so we put up a span wire instead. So, but how it works is all back to normal.
What about our busiest roads and intersections? Any come to mind? I know some drivers could probably name their busiest ones. Any that stand out from your perspective?
Most of our busiest roads are the ones that travel between Richmond County and Columbia County, particularly Jimmy Dias if you're going, or Gordon Highway if you're going to Fort Eisenhower, Washington Road, Riverwatch Parkway, some of those streets that sort of travel in between the two areas. That's where we see the largest movement of traffic during the day, both in the morning and the afternoon.
All right, so those are busy roads. Are there any roads or parts of town, infrastructure-wise, that stand out as more dangerous than others, where next time we're there we should be extra careful?
Probably the construction zones. As most people know, we have quite a few streets under construction, both in downtown Augusta and in some other projects going on. So the construction zones are probably the ones that we would like people to pay the most attention to and slow down and, you know, do your best to be more patient and just take a little longer to get to where you need to go.
We talked a good bit with Margaret Woodard in our first segment about the improvements and upgrades happening downtown. You talk about construction zones, they're all over the place there. What can you tell us about what downtown will be like when it's all said and done? Let me ask you about trees. Do you have anything to do with trees, or is that just not your area?
I have a little bit to do with trees, mostly to close the road so they can cut them down.
Right. And she told us that they're going to be replanted. Yes. So let me just ask you about parking spaces. Business owners want to make sure we have the maximum number of those so they can have a lot of customers. And we customers want to have ease of parking. Tell me what's going to change with that.
So it's a kind of a long story, but I'll try to condense it a bit. Right now on Broad Street, between 13th Street and 5th Street, there are roughly 760 parking spaces on the street for cars. But unfortunately, all of those parking spaces, every single one of them is substandard. And what I mean by that is they're too narrow and they're too short. And so, the vehicle you drove in the 80s or the early 90s is not the vehicle you drive today. Most vehicles have gotten much larger, pickup trucks, SUVs, even passenger cars. They have a wider footprint than they used to. And so just the parking spaces that are currently there, a lot of modern vehicles won't fit in those parking spaces. And you'll notice that if you go downtown, especially like on a lunch hour or at dinner time, you'll have somebody will park over their line, and a lot of people do it intentionally because they don't want people to hit their vehicle.
Right.
And so the number that we're really shooting for here is about 620. That's if we took out all those 760 and we made them standard. We did nothing else but just make those parking stalls standard. It would be about 620. Our current design has about 590 in it, so about 30 less than the 620. So we're trying really hard to get as close to that 620 as we possibly can. Another big area that I think a lot of people maybe aren't talking about as much is the number of parking spaces is important, but it's not the only factor that determines how difficult it is to find a place to park. We need to manage what we have better than we have. Right now, there's no restriction on the parking on Broad Street. So you can go down there at 6 a.m., park there, stay there 24 hours or actually several days before you would get a ticket.
Yep.
And then, and there's nothing anybody can do about that. And so we think we need to manage it better. And if we manage it better, then the number of parking spaces becomes less important, and the management and the enforcement of that becomes more important.
Are you saying parking meters without saying parking meters?
That's one of the options. I'm not saying we should meter the parking. A lot of cities of our size that have a downtown street like Broad Street have them metered, and you pay to park. But there are other things we can do without parking meters. As the traffic engineer, I can restrict the time you can park there, per all the policies and stuff that we're required to follow. So I could make it 2-hour parking or 1-hour parking or things like that. So there's other options if the commission doesn't want to go that route. But there's several things we need to discuss and figure out how we're going to manage it once the project is done.
All right, we'll step away from downtown and just look at Augusta as a whole. Any projects or efforts underway that are going to make traffic flow smoother and better in the future that we should know about?
Yeah, as part of our TIA program, our Transportation Improvement Act program, we have a second, we call it our Intelligent Transportation System project. And so that's how we network all the traffic signals together. So the more I can communicate and see what's happening at a signalized intersection, the better and more efficient we can make it. So we have another project coming up. We're actually in the early stages of that. We had one that we had completed in 2018, and we installed 20-something miles of fiber under the ground to network these traffic signals together, and we've connected about 140 of them. But with the second phase of the project, we have another several $1 million, and we want to connect most of the rest of them together to the network.
And that's so y'all can watch and manage traffic with that.
Exactly, yeah.
3 questions I think I have left, and I hope I get to all of them because I know time is running short. Emergency vehicles, when they're racing around town, can they make a light change?
Yes, it depends on the level of emergency, but if you have a fire truck and it has both its siren and its lights on, and they're heading to the highest level of emergency, they actually transmit to the traffic signal, and the traffic signal recognizes their code, and it also recognizes what direction they're coming from, and it'll turn the light green for them. All
right, second to last question is, I asked you this during our first interview way back when. What causes a traffic backup? Primarily, is it the person at the front of the long congested line who messed up?
There's a lot of reasons why traffic backs up. Oftentimes, sometimes people are slow to react, and that does happen, but oftentimes roads only have a certain capacity. There's only so many cars that can travel down that road in an hour, and it will exceed capacity, particularly in one of the peak hours, the morning or the afternoon when you're coming to work or you're going home. So we do our best to keep traffic moving, but sometimes there's just more cars than there are lanes, and it's just going to cause a delay, and we just make sure we work through it.
Maybe 30 seconds. I should have left more time for this. You're great at your job. You're just one of those people who's great at your job. My question is when, yes, sir, absolutely. When did you realize you had the skill set that was a fit for this gig? Were you a little boy?
You know, my dad was a surveyor, and that's a very mathematical occupation, and I wanted to do that, but you know, I have the blue eyes and I have the blonde hair, and he got ate up by the sun, basically. So he said, be an engineer. It's like the same thing, but you get to sit in an office. So that's how I kind of got into this profession.
Oh my goodness. Well, you are where you're supposed to be, and I appreciate you helping us get around town every day with all you do, you and your team.
Yeah, we do the best we can. We're trying real hard.
Well, it shows. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Usry. We'll have him back really soon. I love talking to John. When we come back, want to hear from you and find out how we can get more great guests on the Means Report.